I'm gonna mute him and let some actual music play for just a second while people are loading in. Welcome, welcome, you guys, to the show. Share it out with your fans and out to the world. We are simulcasting also on my YouTube channel. If you guys know people who want to watch it on YouTube or whatever. The other thing, too, that I wanted to mention is that, oh, now shoot, I just lost my thought. The song came on and it really distracts me, y'all. It's for serious, okay? I'm gonna put participation. I'm hoping that you guys are gonna be willing to come on in and participate at the end of the show so that we can ask some questions. Dr. Richard is a psychologist and works with men and has his own story, so it's going to be a really good show. All right, let's see if I can get his bio updated here so that we can get his the fortune cookie, get his stuff in the fortune cookie. He's got a new book out. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. All right. Oh shoot, did it update? Oh yeah, it did. Okay. I'm not seeing it. Alright, so I don't know why that is not updating. Alright, let's get us going here. Alright, hey guys. It's been a little crazy. Dr. Richard is with us here today. So you are on the Laughter After Trauma show. And my name is Deanna. And I am a speaker, educator, and coach that brings light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. I'm coming to you from not my normal space today. The house is torn up a little bit. So I'm a thriver after intimate partner violence, and my journey brought me to find the beauty and the laughter after, in the healing. And it's really been a journey. And what I do believe is that we are all, capable. We all have inside of us everything that we need. I call it the magic, right? We have magic. We are magic. We are self-healers. And so with that, I do believe that if we share our stories and we showcase the stories of everyday people who have triumphed in the face of their trauma, then we're providing hope, awareness, connection, and community, and we're sharing that laughter after. So I am going to bring Dr. Richard up to video here. Let's see if I do this correctly. Invite to video. And you'll have to unmute yourself because I muted you because you were working with some papers or something. So just hit your microphone. There you go. Thanks.
Hey,
how are you?
Great. Welcome.
This is Dr. Richard, you guys, and let me tell you something. It's his first time on Fireside for real. So congratulate him on getting all the way here to screen with the mic working and the camera working. It's a challenge.
Technology is the challenge.
Yes. Exactly. Tech struggle is real. Deborah, who's in the audience the other day, yesterday, she did a show and her electricity went out. And now she is from Broadway. That's where she's from. And let me tell you what, the show went on. She just her guest just was like, I don't know what's happening, and she kept talking, and then boom, Deborah was back up in the dark. She's like, that's all right. We get in a generator. It's fine. Just kept rolling like nothing happened. It was great.
Right on.
So, all right. So today we're talking with you. And before we get into your story and into the interview, I'd like people to get to know you. So, can you tell us, like, where are you based? Do you have a family? You know, just tell us a little bit about yourself now,
Sure
you right
thing.
now.
Yes, I'm Richard Olberger. I'm a clinical psychologist and sports and performance consultant based out of Los Angeles, California. I'm married with three children, one incoming freshman into college, and two 13-year-old twins, boy and girl,
Oh, fun.
and a father to a 5-year-old shepherd.
Gotta include the fur babies. Got it.
Oh,
All
yes.
right. Well, so that's cool. So, um, before we go into your story, because we were talking a little bit, and you do have like a pretty interesting story, so I know everybody wants to get right into it. But I like to do an icebreaker question, which we didn't get to go over, which is good. It's better that way. So, it's a this or that question. It's nothing. Don't fret. Don't get scared. Everybody looks at me when we don't get to go over it, and they're like, "Oh my god, what is she going to ask me?" And so this is just a this or that question. So you have kids, you live in Los Angeles. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions when it comes to this or that. Do you prefer the beach or the mountains?
I'll go with the mountains.
Mm, nice choice. See, I lived in California. I lived in Santa Cruz for 4 years. And I felt like, my goodness, you could get to the beach or the mountains within 3 hours. Like everything was, you're surrounded by everything. So it was so nice. I always go with the beach, but that's cool. All right. The next one is um, books, because I know you, since you wrote a book, you're a book person. So would you prefer to read a book in hand, or are you an audible person?
Without a doubt, in hand.
Paper. Do you like the smell of books? Okay, I'm the only
Um,
weird one.
I just like
It's
holding it.
okay.
I like holding it. I like having two, three go at a time, and that's part of my self-care routine.
I love it. I don't know what it is about the smell of books. I don't know if it's the glue. I don't know. But there's something about the smell of a new book. All right, well, good. We're going to get into your story. We were talking a little bit about it on the back end, about kind of what brought you into um, where you are right now, writing this book, and kind of the way your career went coming from childhood and why you chose the career and so forth. So, why don't you just kind of go into it and tell us about it? If there's a stopping point that I need to ask a question, I'll pause you a bit.
I mean, there's many turning points along the way. I mean, my mom was a guidance counselor and a school teacher, so choosing to become a clinical psychologist, maybe it's that my family's from Vienna, Austria, but I always loved listening. I always loved caring for families and stories and where people came from and the dynamics even amongst parents, amongst siblings. So the choice to go full on and probably after I became a father, like fully did dive into becoming a clinical psychologist. And like most other Americans, once you get a degree, you realize there's tons of student loans and you go for the most. My mother trained me, take the practical job. So I went to work for LA County Department of Mental Health and was recruited to become a crisis responder, where apparently the one skill which is highly needed is to hospitalize individuals when they're in a crisis or an emergency.
Mm,
And God forbid any of us or a family member wind up there, we'd like to know that we'd be safe and protected from harming ourselves or others. I also would go into the school system, right, if there was a school violence incident. So it was a high profile job and got your name on the shirt and got to boss around school principals and ER doctors and even policemen. And summarily overnight, my supervisor went on vacation for a week and I overnight was transferred down to LA's Skid Row, which was seen as like the one place you'd never want to go work. It's certainly not comfortable conditions. I went from my air conditioned office on the west side to literally being on Skid Row and working out of a two by four,
Mhm.
double wide trailer where they had all of us staffed while the clinic was under construction. So it was an ego breaker. It was emotionally devastating. And yet at the same time, it became this kind of path to redemption and the new discovery about myself as a human being and about what it takes to truly connect to another human being who's down on his luck or her
You
luck.
had Yeah, and you had mentioned something about in this backstory about your dad and your dad losing his job. So how did that impact you on
Well, it's
this
interesting,
journey?
right? We call it the parallel process, right? Like
Mhm.
obviously the worst thing for me at age 19 years old to see my father at age 61 lose his career, and he was not even a college graduate. So that became a lot of the identity about his loss of job, his subsequent depression, and fading and withdrawing. So I often reflect. I'd call home and speak only to my mom. I'd get updates about a man who was in the other room, but didn't couldn't really get it from him, and couldn't even get the words about his experience. Just the shock trauma of what had happened, and that was the only conversation he could have for years was about what had happened, and it was kind of stuck on a broken record. So to have that experience, with all the degrees and advanced degrees and all the quote unquote, I was in my mid 30s and educated and can, conceivably very powerful position and influential position, and it to have it taken overnight evoked feelings that I think most human beings never want to. We do a lot, especially as a man, to protect ourselves from ever feeling, which is vulnerability, complete loss of my role as a provider, loss of control. It was devastating and brought out a lot of depression and grief. And at the same time, it led to tremendous then reaching out for help, getting into my own therapy. Like
Mhm.
I recall sitting in a therapist's office and feeling like, was I followed? Did somebody know I was here? Like, even though we use the word, oh, don't stigmatize therapy, I didn't realize I had internalized a lot of that and felt shame and
So
carried that. Mhm.
as a therapist, you stigmatized needing therapy? Is that what you were saying just
That's
now?
right. I think that's correct. As a
Okay.
as a male,
That's
right? And you realize like, whoa, like there's a what they call cognitive dissonance. Like on the one hand, I'm telling everyone else to do this. On the other hand, I don't feel either I'm worth it or the way in which, right, feeling like a victim or feeling as if just that like I'd been punished, like something external had taken influence over me, and wrestling with that. There was so much anger there that I don't think initially in that kind of a trauma that I was ready to look completely for ways in which I could heal
mhm.
or even know what I needed.
So you were married at the point that this all went down. Were you married?
Yes, yes.
And you had all three of your kids at this point, or any kids? How was that?
Yes, all three of my kids, as part of what the motivation for the job was, in fact, was that I could, the healthcare, and I could be there even if I worked at night. I could be there in the, kind of in the day, in the morning to say goodbye to go to school, and at night to put them to bed. And it seemed like a nice bookend, uh, kind of provider role, even though I didn't like some of the, unsafe positions I was putting myself in. It felt like a good thing to do, but obviously, it also, right. I'm sure my oldest son was probably aware more than the other two that I was preoccupied.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what were their ages at the time that this was kind of going on, and you were trying to work your way through this?
The oldest was 9 or 10, and so the youngest were 5.
Okay. So, yeah, so like I guess they get and I'm not a psychologist, I do coaching, but they get an impact and a feeling from you, but it's not the same as like when you were 19 and you kind of actually knew what was happening like for real with your dad. and why he was feeling that way to an extent. Maybe not on a psychological level, but you knew, oh, he lost his job. Kids don't always relate to that when they're a little bit younger, but they still know and they feel all of the things. It's
They they
interesting.
excuse me.
Yes,
Mm,
that's okay. No, go ahead. I
yeah.
didn't know if you were getting ready to say something. So, no, but in this position though, when you found yourself there and you found yourself reaching out for help, you also mentioned something that in that place you also discovered yourself and connection by working with, and I'm asking this, I guess, was that through working with the people you were working with on what you call Skid Row,
It's
or
it's
was
a
it through the
multi-level
therapy?
process. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even realize sometimes that you're replaying parental trauma or things you went through, or how much I was pushing off repeating that experience. Um and that there you are, right, in a similar kind of a situation, or at least I told myself it was. But the difference was, right, I had a lot of good mentors, a lot of good teachers and people that reminded me, look, you have a PhD. This is just, there's a pathway out of this. And I remember doing like an art therapy thing, like drawing myself, like kind of in prison, and climbing to the top of a mountain. So I used the opportunity. I had a very kind supervisor who made it possible for me to attend every training that I wanted to go to. So I
Mm-hmm.
practiced cognitive behavioral therapy. I invested in a trauma training. I had a colleague that kept calling me, you have to do
Mm,
somatic experience. You have to do this training.
love it.
And my answer was always, I'm too busy. I've got the kids. I've got, where all the right excuses that we use and that we go through as adults and parents, right? We're so busy taking care of others. And I didn't know it at the time that can be kind of a mask. And yet being stripped down to my, bare essentials, it made me go, no, you absolutely need to get involved. And the part of the trauma training is doing the therapy practice, and you have to get into your physiology, and you have to get very raw into what you're carrying around with you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it was just such a gift. It was such a gift for me to become vulnerable and also to learn how to take care of my own nervous system. So I remember part of the training when I got out of the car, from the house, uh, and get involved with them, I would have to do a little of um, releasing any symptoms in my body. I have to be very aware of what I was holding, just to create kind of conscious separation within myself. So there's some work that somebody's, both either secondary trauma or just what we absorb daily, to check in with your body. So that became a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, I'd walk through the park when I'd get out of the car, and I'd go see two or three clients in my office. And no matter how tired I was, I'd get re energized. I remember getting this kind of message of, right, this is there. This is going to be there for you. You create this. And so, at some point, I did whatever I could to make that stay as short as possible, and create an exit plan.
Yeah, and one of the things that I say, and it's kind of become a mantra, and it came through one of my mentors, and it was, where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. The people who I think find themselves stuck, for instance, like your dad, they identified everything that they went through as who they were, and not just a place and time. And if you can understand that and recognize that you are simply in a place and time that doesn't define you. Like your friend told you, you have a PhD. There is a pathway out of this. So, to view the situation, because, and I know you've probably helped a bunch of your patients with this, but then on the same token, you were going through it and had to be on the other end of that and recognizing, receiving it and not being the giver. So I can I can
That's
imagine
right.
that's a huge role reversal mind.
And it's funny, as much as I wanted a way out, I didn't realize that part of me didn't know how to ask or how to receive, like you said. And I had a young doctor who came to me. I didn't even know his profession. He was just a volunteer soccer coach. who told me that he worked with senior citizens that had a whole chain of practices. And he kept looking at me, you know,
You kind of
I
keep
will
going
send
into the
you every
matrix
single
here.
person yeah, yeah, I will give you something that you can do to help others. And trust me, I'll help you. And it was like, well, it wasn't logical. It wasn't set out to do. That wound up being, what created the sustenance for me to launch out. And it wasn't logical. It's not who I am, like you said, but it became an opportunity to help others. And I tell my clients that often when they're trying to figure things out or trying to figure out how to meet somebody else, or choose a way to give back, choose a way to connect,
Mm,
let go
mm,
of the result, because when
right.
you're in the process of doing something, whether it be getting involved in AA or any other recovery process and taking care of other people in a way that also gives back to you, special things can happen.
Right. So, in essence, find a way to serve. When you find yourself going through those things, find a way to serve. So, for me, it was kind of a reversal of that because I went through coaching and it led me to coach. You know what I'm saying? I saw how much I needed it and how it helped me and how it really allowed me to process the traumas that I had gone through and start finding a specific direction to be able to craft the life that I wanted. And I was like, everybody needs to know this kind of stuff. They need to know the system. Like, I didn't know that there was a system out there that you could follow, that you could do in a specific way and go through those processes. And whether it's not just about setting goals and accomplishing things, it's about creating and crafting the life that you want. That's what it's about. It's an objective to get you to shape this thing that you're building, which is fluid. It doesn't really like stay the same. Like, you could be in the middle of the year right now. We just did a talk about this last month. In the middle of the year right now, where you look back at what you decided on in January and you're like, I don't need that one anymore. I think I'm going this way, So it's your life, it's your goals. Nobody says that, that thing you wrote down in January is your end point. It's just stepping stones. So I know you write a lot about this because I know your book that you're launching right now, which is the Zero Method, and there's a subtitle to it that says Unmasking the Hero Within. Is that part of it?
Awaken the hero within.
Awaken. Okay. Awaken the hero within. So
But
tell
you're right. We do talk about masks. You're right.
okay. I saw unmasking somewhere, so I don't know where, but I get a lot of the information jumbled. So tell me about, like, okay, so I'm sure that those experiences that you've talked about brought you to writing this, and it's specifically geared towards men because, like you said, you did all the things that you had to check the boxes. And then you went into this provider role. So when you found yourself in this position, your manhood, your ego, but it's part of your masculine identity was a little threatened, you know? And so you found yourself in that place and now you wrote this book. So tell us about the book. I want to hear a little bit more about that too,
Sure.
because you're in
I
launch
mean,
phase right now, right?
yeah, we've had our first book signing event 2 weeks ago, and we hope to do more here
Nice.
locally. And I've been on the virtual book tour with going on podcasts such as this, and it's been a real gift to see who from my past and who reaches out and whispers across the counter and says, "Can you help my friend?" or what it's led to.
Mm,
Um, but it's a tremendous evolution. I always loved writing. Talk about my own inner hero, right? I always loved writing. I used to write little romantic poems. I'm not sure they quite had the effect that I desired in terms of dating, but yeah, I used to love to write, and along the lines of becoming a provider, getting a degree, getting the advanced degree. Where's your job going to be? All these things, these that I started to believe were part of who the identity I needed to become. I started to let go of things. Even my sport, which was basketball, became the way I played was like a type of war. Uh,
mm,
you know, um, and it wasn't until I later got into martial arts and learned about meditation and breathing and um, that there's different styles that you don't have to just be in your personality. You have to learn about the nature of other people and you have to adapt to that. In fact, somebody who may be perceived as weaker or smaller than you can defeat you if you're not aware of the way in which you approach things. So,
Hmm.
um, I think that writing became a gift of my self care. That as I launched this private practice and when I left the county 7 years ago, it became a gift to myself to get coaching, to have writing classes, and to even put in my calendar once a week, whether it was an hour or two, to Friday mornings was writing time, and part of it was work. Like I said, with a teacher, with learning how to structure, how to create ideas, because I was so used to writing like a PhD. I was so used to trying to get all my information out there and explain things to people, and not realizing whether or not it's landing. When I'm talking to you, I get feedback. I see your face. I get to see when you want to speak. You don't get that writing. So it was great feedback for me because even the writing coach would hear some of the stories, hear what I just told you about my father, hear the things that I got from him. And it became clear to me that there was just so much there and that the stories are rich. The stories are what bring people closer to you and are relatable and not a textbook full of information. You may lose them with big words or big concepts, and they may not stick. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question too, secondly, and then I'd like you to share maybe another story that you might have written about in the book. But your handle is Richard Listens. So that has to be a story right there because it's not your last name.
Well, it's hard to pronounce my last name
Would
and
be
how to
cool.
look it up. It's hard to look it up, and honestly, it's the gentleman. It's funny, like everyone in my life who's part of the business, including the gentleman who introduced us, Peter Sobey, who I initially launched my podcast with. Um, Inspired me, and everyone is part of everything my brand is. So really, I was thinking out of the channel to help bring a website. And every person has come to this and said that's incredible. Right? That's uh,
All right,
amazing.
Richard, we're losing you a little bit. Okay, I don't know. I think we lost him for a minute.
Can you hear
So,
me?
Richard, I can't hear. No, I can't. You're breaking up a lot. I heard you talk about Peter Sobey, which is cool, and I'm guessing he had something to do with this name. But I really want to hear this story, and you're breaking up. Um, I know you might have gone off of Wi-Fi. Maybe you could try switching back. I don't know.
How about now?
And this is um, oh, I think you're back. All right, testing, testing, talk.
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, there you go. There you go. There you go. I can hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. I heard about Peter who connected us, and I know you said something about he was producing your podcast. And is he
Yeah,
was
it's just it's not a great story other than the gentleman who helped design my website just thought it was more than Richard ordered or what. And ever since then, was like response about, and right, it's people I love the brand. It's like walk by me, just kind of here. Uh, uh, so I
mm,
love it. I did spell my last name.
you kind of keep slipping into the matrix. I'm missing some of what you're saying. Are you on Wi-Fi? Are you back on Wi-Fi right now, Richard? I'm sorry. I know it's a pain. He had to keep moving earlier too. There you go. All right.
Can
Yes,
you
I
hear me now?
can. And now you get to be outside with us. That's also pretty. So ultimately, it's about the fact that you are
Awesome.
saying that not only is it a play on words because you listen, that's your what you do, but it was also because your name is really hard to pronounce. Did I get that out of that mess? Okay.
You got it. And also, it's about your community and who you know and trusting the people you work with. And in this case, it was my web
I
designer.
love it. I love that. Yeah, it's such a great catch. I mean, and I know you said your last name and I still don't know how to pronounce it. When I look you up, I just type Richard O and I let the rest happen on its own. But yeah, Richard listens. I mean, that's perfect. So he was spot on.
Well, that's actually ties into why the book is called The
Mm.
Zero Method, because on Skid Row, the only way you could give an appointment was on this little post it note that you'd scribble on in your
Mm.
pocket, because you'd be meeting with clients, standing up against a dumpster or, in a tiny hallway. And so I would have to write on a little post it, Dr. O, 7:22, 5 p.m. And the clients would wait in a line in this trailer and then get up to a window and stick it under like a bus window, and someone
Mm.
on a microphone would announce, your 5 p.m. client is here. So, one day one of the, secretaries got it and said, Dr. Zero, your 5 p.m. is here.
Oh,
And my coworker was a graphic artist, my social worker, and so he drew up a whole mock-up and created this kind of superhero image behind Dr. Zero.
oh my
Uh,
God.
and the imagery around this guy who drove from Beverly Hills down to Skid Row every day and kind of threw his cape on to do what he could. And I like that. I like that idea. I use imagery a lot with my clients, right? To create this idea of like, this is not a small thing. This is just not about going to work. This is kind of about a mission and a purpose.
Yeah. So I love that. So they saw O and called you Dr. Zero. And from that, it also birthed the zero method. And so tell us about that because there's a meaning behind the zero in the zero method as well, correct?
There is a meaning behind the zero, very, very similar in spiritual knowledge is a state of zero state or zero mind. And it kind of about going, like we talked about, from these kind of higher order checklist goals and identity, from career status, relationships, and kind of slowly moving more internal to the highest level of the zero method being kind of a zero state, a state of oneness, a state of being in line between your values, who you are, what you do, how you think. So the zero method kind of walks through that from the states of learning how to get in touch with your breath to your body, to learning how to tap in more to your community, into a place of where you're living in alignment, hopefully, where you're moving towards, like you talked about, concrete goals. It's not that we want to just teach clients to be meditating on a mountaintop, but where they're integrating who they are into their life's purpose. And this is kind of the journey that I've been walking through myself. So it felt more authentic to me to be modeling the work that I've been doing as opposed to speaking from just a purely academic intellectual standpoint. So to be able to give clients a book, to be able to walk them through something and also share personal examples, I think makes therapy more relatable and hopefully safer and more approachable.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you kind of explored different modalities, and it hasn't just been just a clinical approach, and that's really awesome to have in a practitioner because you know not every practitioner is open to that. They just want to go by certain book rules, right? CBT, this is what we do, and that's how we approach it. And to have somebody who has a bunch of modalities, like you said, you learned somatic, right? Explain to people what that is, because I know about it, but I'm probably not going to do it a service, and I'm sure you will. But explain to people what that is.
Sure, and even within your question is like that every provider needs to go through their own journey. A lot of people are kind of in
Mm.
this Western mindset of I'm going to learn CBT. This is the board certified. This is the,
Mm-hmm.
most effective method. They want I want the one that's most scientifically based or research based. So I can't tell someone what the best practice is for them, but for me, I was in this always like, I need to learn more and more methods and more trainings. And that was kind of an addictive thing too, that it felt like it was never going to be enough. And there's no holy grail for what's the perfect thing. So for me, based on where I was at working with trauma and realizing that my body could only absorb so much of it, somatic experience is a method, and there's a bunch of different theorists behind it, and but that's talked about by a gentleman named Peter Levine, which talks about basically how the body holds trauma from a very early age, and some of it is not heavy trauma like we've talked about. Some of it is just attachment style. Some of
Mm,
it is, like you said, even though, I could have been 19 years old, sometimes it's later in life, right? If we go through a loss of a job that's sudden or loss of a relationship, even if, right? No matter how you look at the last couple of years, COVID, right? Anything that happens too fast, too quick, out of our control, can be traumatic, and
right.
we will go at lengths to find coping skills on how to deal with those events and how to prevent them from happening in the future in some ways that we're not even conscious of, right? Where individuals will
Oh.
be even too afraid to get back into another relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, that method of learning how to help myself and help clients have their nervous system slow down and regulate and get integrated, and
Mm-hmm.
even how to bring that into session where, when clients are getting too busy in their head or too rapid in their thoughts or too busy even back in the trauma story, that ability to teach our nervous system and to practice that in session, slow down and regulate, is the gift that we will always benefit from. And in
Mm-hmm.
some ways, something that I thought talk therapy by itself didn't accomplish, that we could just talk and talk and
Mm-hmm.
talk and not really learn how to integrate it into a different way of living.
Right. And so somatic therapy kind of goes into that. EMDR is
That's
something
right.
that goes
I
into
use I
that.
use mainly somatic experience and EMDR are my
Mm-hmm.
preferred modalities because it's not only the trauma, but it's how it affected our belief system. How did it affect our sense of security, responsibility? Do we carry around shame or beliefs about ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
What did it mean about me if I have a maladaptive belief that my father lost his job and therefore couldn't give me money, and the lack of money meant the lack of love, and so therefore I start overworking as an adult. So we
Mm-hmm.
think that we're course correcting, but we're not
Right.
even, we're on autopilot and we don't realize, oh my God, like I'm becoming a toxic version of myself based on a belief that there was something missing, when
Right.
there was nothing missing. There was absolutely nothing missing. In fact, my father gave me what he did give me, and which I wish he was prouder of or more aware of within himself before he passed, was that his skills, his kindness, his listening ability, his warmth towards family and friends, including my friends when they came over, are stories that I share to this day. That when a
Yeah.
friend would come to the door, you'd say, "Where's Deanna?" For 30 minutes. My dad would be down there, sure enough, sitting there in his free time. Like that was the only thing he wanted to do, was connect to a young adult. So, that gift is something that I think, even though he didn't give me the modeling for education, that he gave me the modeling of how to be with others.
Right. And, regardless of what we go through as kids, 9 times out of 10, even though I'm sure there are cases where this is not true, mostly parents are out for our best interest and just doing their level best. I mean, you know what you know, and we're all a product of where we came from. The only way to move out of that and to expand is to start to recognize that we have the capability and we're not tied to that. But it takes a bit to recognize that. I mean, I was in my 40s. So, you
Well,
know,
most people, right, to let go of your parents and blame the blame story, and yeah, to practice a lot of forgiveness around that. And for me, that was part of my grieving process, was to let go of there was anger at his loss of who he was, but even who I thought he was not really who I needed him to be. It's an amazing process, that a lot of healing can come through grieving and processing,
hmm
and which is why I'm so profoundly all in on the men's work for men, because learning how to express grief, learning how to express anger, learning how to see beyond like you said, even in the most painful of situations, even in cases of abandonment, we learn something from what that parent figure was going through, or
Right.
about the way they handled something, or what they felt, or felt they could or couldn't do for themselves.
Right. And so in that is where I have like what I say are my five keys, the way I process through my trauma. And everybody processes differently, but I do think these five keys tend to be an element somewhere in the processing. So for me, and it went in this order, and this doesn't mean that everybody does this way either, but, and you can say, yeah, that's true, or you can say you missed the mark, and that would be okay too. I'd like to learn. But I started with forgiveness, and the reason why I started with that is I was really trying to have gratitude in everything, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Or like you said, the lesson. What was the good that came out of it? What did I learn? How do I grow from this? And because of the magnitude of the trauma and how it impacted my kids directly, I was not wrapping my head around the fact that there was any way I could find gratitude in it. And so I had to back up from that. And for me, it had to start with forgiveness. And it was about that releasing, not the absolution, not the condoning of the things that happened, but the ability to release that person and say, you are who you are. I forgive that. Don't have to have you in my life, but I can let it go. But with that, I could also let go of the anger and the resentment and the bitterness and honestly the guilt that it was taken up. It was so much space that it was taken up. And ultimately the forgiveness turned inward. I had to forgive myself because I was blaming myself for things that happened, that were outside of my control, but I felt like I didn't do all the things that I needed to do, or I could have done better, or I could have did it sooner, or if I had done this then this wouldn't have happened then, and just all the things that you
Right.
do, right? And so once I got through that, I could get to the gratitude of saying, hey, you know, it has put me in a different place. It's led me to coaching. It's helped my kids a ton. The fact that I've gone through this journey, it's led me to my current husband, who polar opposite, nothing like that, you know. All of that would not have happened, right? So that's how I got to the gratitude. And then it was, the conscious language, eliminating that negative self-talk, really paying attention to that, and then understanding self-care and self-love, like what they really mean and how they're two different things, but for real, not the fluff, not the cliches that we see, but like you said, reading is part of your self-care routine, and things like that, bettering yourself, whatever. So that's kind of was my process. But you know for you guys, for men, I think especially of a certain age, it's even more so. It's even different for you guys, because there's an additional, just like for women and our nurturing side that's put on us, there's a different weight by society and culture that's put on men. And is that something you address in the book, in the way you approach it?
Absolutely. I get into, right, a lot of the roles that men take on, them, what we were referring to earlier in terms of the masks,
Mm-hmm.
right? In ways in which there's a feeling of, right, that this is who I have to be. And it's confusing these days, right? Things are changing, gender roles are changing, but there's, I think male identity is still caught in a certain level. I have to be the provider. And there can be a lot of clients come to me who are not the breadwinner and they're struggling with it, even though they're in a great situation. It's still
Right.
something they have to reconcile. Is it okay for me to put this down? Is it all right? What does it mean about me? And
Right.
maybe that's not universal to all men, but it does come up, right? And this idea that I constantly have to be maybe in control, that emotions are not safe, that it's not okay to be vulnerable. This is something that requires a lot of conditioning around. And again, it's not 100%, but it is something that leads to a lot of what I see as problems for men in terms of withdrawal, addictions to mask emotions, isolation,
Mm-hmm.
um, and even in a lot of the work that we see in Brene Brown work and different workshops like that, they show couples where the male is desperately wanting support of his partner, yet doesn't not ask for it. He's
Right.
there, he doesn't find the words, he doesn't quite show it, and yet it's what's needed in the relationship, but it violates this preconceived understanding that I need to protect others. I need
Right.
to not show them that I'm wounded. So I get into breaking those things down and getting beyond the mask. And that's something that each individual needs to do. It's not universal how it shows up for you. And you could be a woman with some of these similar ideas based on your upbringing. Uh,
Right. I do think that sometimes women and men, they feel like they need to be strong in front of whatever audience, right? So for women, it probably happens more in front of their kids, whereas men, it probably happens in front of their wife and their kids, that they feel like they need to be strong so they can't show their emotions, or break down. And by not doing that, where Brene comes from is you're lacking vulnerability, which is the thing that connects us. It's the thing that connects us, and it creates shame in a place where there shouldn't be shame, because the strongest thing you can do is being vulnerable and being honest and open.
exactly. Exactly, and the same thing, right? If it's also showing it's not okay to care for ourselves, right? Like I told
Mm,
you earlier, if I have to be at work and I have to take on another shift and another crisis call, or then I'm saying it's for my kids. I got to go be with my kids. I got to take care of them, but I'm never taking time off to put on the oxygen mask, right?
mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They're never seeing me do something to take care of my health or well-being. What kind of a message is that sent? We say, right, this kind of guilt that gets passed on. I'm doing it all for you. All
Mm-hmm,
this great life,
mm-hmm.
this safe thing. But what do children really need? What do those in relationships to us really need? Is to feel like we are healthy,
Yeah,
and and the connection is healthy.
and the great, I don't know, oxymoron in this story is that you're saying you're doing it for them, but what you're modeling to them is then later going to create that they do that to themselves, which is exactly what you don't want them to do. We're not teaching our kids how to take care of themselves, how to set the boundaries. What does it look like? What does it mean to create a fulfilling, happy, purposeful life? We're teaching them our routines because they learn from example, from what they see.
Hmm.
And I've said this so much to clients. It's like, and like I work with a mom and daughter, and sometimes I get, like, I do all this stuff and it's not appreciated. Stop doing that stuff.
Hmm.
You don't need to
That's
do
right.
that stuff. You don't have to do that stuff. She'd rather you home at dinner playing cards,
That's right.
you know?
That's right. And are we
So,
really checking in, right? I was on a podcast earlier today with about parents and athletes, right? Are we doing this for them? Do they really want it? Do they really want the level of devotion and care around this?
mhm,
Is this where they want to grow? Or are we deciding for them because it's something unfulfilled within ourselves? And if we're not doing that work or asking those questions, we're
right.
setting out a path for, some conflict down the road.
Right. And then when you see your kid doing exactly how you were doing and you're like, "Don't do that." But it's already there. So it's a fun little cycle. Listen, before we go any further, I want to let people know in the audience we're getting down to the last 10 minutes. So right now I would like to invite anybody who has any questions or anything they might like to add or any comments, to go ahead and raise your hand and invite yourself up to speak, and I'll let you come up, and ask questions. But in the meantime, we'll keep talking. You guys don't have to be shy, but I know sometimes people are into things and they're just listening. But I do want to open that up for people just in case they want to ask any questions. So the book led you into, like, I guess life experiences and your connections led you into the book. But I keep reading your quotes on your Instagram. Like on the daily, I read like little quotes that you put up. Are all your quotes coming from your book?
A
That's a
lot of
real
them are.
question.
A lot of them are, yeah.
Like this, I have up on here because I just wanted to read it. You can't make meaningful decisions when you're reactive. Establish grounding practices that work for you and practice them until they become second nature.
Right.
So,
So,
uh,
right, a lot of what we talked about, like me getting into somatic experience, was like I talked about creating transitions and creating grounding. What does grounding mean? Sometimes it's something as simple as noticing my feet up against the back of this chair, or paying attention to my body when I'm in session or while I'm doing this interview. Sometimes it's about, right, getting in touch with how is my breathing, right? So ways in which for you can check in with not just what you're feeling, but how your what your muscle tension is,
Mhm.
right? Where are you holding things?
Mhm.
What's the quality of your thoughts? Um, what type of thoughts are you having? So getting in touch, if we're not investing in ourselves in that way, and this isn't just, oh, I went to the gym, I checked another box, right? We get good at doing things, but not necessarily the techniques that help us to stop and slow down. So this can look very different for each person, right? Regular my clients are like, oh, I do this routine every day and this is what works for me. I'm not going to change it, right? And you may do things very naturally,
Mhm.
but usually it's some gentle movement of some sort or some stillness. For me, I'm even sitting here right now. I put up this fountain to honor my father after he passed, so I sit out here 10 minutes twice a day just to listen to water,
Mhm.
just to center my breath, just to slow down, put away the phone. So things that get me more connected to me and nature, and then vis-a-vis help me to connect to others.
Yeah. And I know I think that we get confused about being human beings. We think we're human doings and
That's
we are
right.
human beings. And so but it's hard to just be. And that was something for me when I started, my healing process, just meditation was it was one of the biggest struggles that I ever had because I couldn't sit quietly with myself. I couldn't. My brain went in a million directions. Now it goes in about 100. But it was rough. And so I had to start. I had to stick to guided meditation at first only just because I needed somebody telling me what to focus and center my mind on, how to move through things. Just to
Yeah.
okay, just picture this. Even if it's just picture a beach or whatever. It's just like because if I didn't have that, I couldn't keep a clear head. Um, I couldn't silence my thoughts. So, and that's another thing that's grounding is not only meditation, but being able to affirm the things that matter to you. Because all of our thoughts are affirmations, whether they're good or bad. So you might as well make them positive, so that
You
you
said it,
know.
that's what talk about in the book, right? From gratitude practices, affirmations, right? Even with my athletes, I talk about what's your self talk? What are the things you're saying to yourself? And then you said it, some form of, guided meditation, breathing, visualization, realizing that your mind, it's going to be the sooner we allow our mind to go to another place, we can see the goal and then our body will follow. A lot of
Hmm.
the activities we do is that trusting that if you want to get somewhere in 6 months or a year, let your mind take you there first.
Hmm.
And a lot of the Western practices, we just trust our thoughts way too much. We think we are our thoughts. So it's interesting conversations I have with teenagers, right? They're like, I
Yeah.
have these thoughts and they make me feel this way. And I'm like, well, what if we just didn't trust our thoughts? What if we don't know where our thoughts come from? So, without getting too preachy, right? We're so much on social media, so much phone, so much news. The inundation of information can flood our brains, and we can only hold so much. So, learning how to, get to zero state, to empty the mind, to have practices where a little bit of each day you're just being wherever
Right.
you are, right? You don't have
Mhm.
to be more than you are, right?
Right.
And there's no rule that by doing all the time you're getting more successful, or by going on more Tinder dating apps that you're getting closer to dating. Sometimes we're pushing things away by overdoing.
Right. It's not a contest. know, how much can I do? Yeah. So
Right?
I know I say this to one of my sisters all the time. I'm like, it's your busyness is killing you.
Yeah.
And it's just that's what it's doing. It's killing you. You have hives and you can't eat and you're allergic to everything. Your busyness
Right.
is killing
Our
you.
physiologic, yeah, our body is showing us a lot of the time.
Right.
and,
I,
and,
I,
and what we're feeling and what
I
we're
don't
what
have
we're avoiding.
right, and I don't have it right here, but I read the book. Your body keeps the score. I mean, it's the
That's
same
right.
thing. Like if you listen to it first, I think it's like the oldest language there is body language, right? You come into contact or in the vicinity of somebody and you get this feeling and you're like, oh, I had this gut feeling. I need to not be around that person. And then as kids, we tell them, ignore that, kiss Uncle Johnny, or do this or do
Hmm.
that, right? And you start to really go, oh, well, it's not polite, or I'm not doing the right thing, or it's not the right etiquette, or whatever it is that you start ignoring it. But if we really paid attention to it, our body tells us a lot, not just in those instances. I mean, it tells you stuff about eating, it tells you your body's a miracle, but you have to really learn how to pay attention to it because we get untuned from it so much as we grow up that we have to actually reconnect. But if you tried to get a 2-year-old to eat something that their body didn't want, they ain't eating it. It's not happening. I don't know if you fed toddler. You have. I know you fed toddler twins. I mean, that is whew, that had to be fun. So
Picky eaters.
yeah, but I mean, like listening and tuning in. So I mean, that's a big like a whole nother topic. But anyway, I'm not gonna go over time with this. Are there any? I would like maybe you to give us 2 to 3 of key things that you would like us to take away, whether it's from your book, a practice, or any bit of advice, whatever it is. Give us 2 to 3 things that bring you to your laughter after that you would say this is something you should stick with.
Well, I'm going to go with what you led with, which is the universal language is play. And no matter what you've been through or what you're holding on right now, finding a way, like you said, sometimes it starts with the body. If it's finding a funny show or finding a way to laugh, talk to an old friend, laughter. If you, it will anything that triggers the parasympathetic nervous system makes your body feel good is good for you. And if you can duplicate that practice on any frequency, put that into whatever goals you're setting because feeling good and being happy and injecting happiness are a
Mm-hmm.
secret to any kind of healing and growth. That's number one. Number two, take the time out to build a routine, whether it be 30 minutes to an hour, whether it's the beginning of the day or spread out throughout your day, and whether you be the busiest ER doctor or a stay at home mom, wherever, somewhere in between, you can create transitions for you if you're hunting for those opportunities. So look for them, find time to breathe, take a walk, listen to something soothing, take a brief nap, whatever feels good and helps you to heal and lets you know that affirmative message to yourself that you are worth it. That's number two. And number three, if you can, surround yourself with people that are supportive and help you grow. And if sometimes that's hard to find, choose one and be willing to ask that friend for help. And that's be as selfish as possible, whether it's asking them to meet you for a walk, for a phone call, whatever you need to help you get from where you're at, and just repeat that to yourself. You are worth it. If you are having trouble receiving that help, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to receive that help. You will give it back. And we're just reconditioning ourselves. We're all healing. Everyone you meet is going through the same process. And you're worth healing. And it begins now.
Yeah. Well, that was beautiful. I can't even add anything to that, other than here you are in this community right here, and it's proof. Oh, there you go. The zero method. I love it. It's proof. And I have your website right here. So can they go to your website to get it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Everything. Richard Liston's got a link to the book, newsletter.
I have
We'll
it
be tagging
downloaded,
each
I
other
think.
on
I don't.
IG, Instagram, everything. You can get the podcast and everything if they want to check me out.
All right, perfect. Perfect. So you can connect with him there. I have his website in the fortune cookie that's scrolling across your screen. So you guys can connect with him there. I will put all of this in the show notes when I get this set up and spread out to all the places so you guys can connect there as well. But, really here, right here, this is what I'm trying to do is just share with people. Like, if we can, you can. This is the community to come to know that we're all going through the same stuff. We're more alike than we are different. And ultimately, we want the same things fundamentally out of life. So instead of canceling or competing or any of that other stuff, just connect. That's really where we need to be. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you guys coming on and showing up with us. I totally appreciate you coming and spending an hour with me. Dr. O, Dr. Zero, Dr. Richard. I've been just calling you Dr. Richard.
All of it.
All of it. So until next time, we'll see you guys next week here. You guys, I see you. You're beautiful. Shine on. Thank you. I'll play some music here and get us played out of this.
Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. I'll touch base with you after we get off of this.
Okay, sure thing. I gotta hold to my family dinner right
There you go. Have fun.
Like your lazy eye, your love